All right, guys. Well, this is a very special episode of the Brass Knuckles Bible Club. A little bit of a different guest that we have on today. Those of you that loyally watch the show, you know what we typically talk about and what we do here. However, today we're going to be switching gears a little bit. Today, I have the honor of introducing Staff Sergeant Michael Nichols. You might know him as one of the drill instructors from Ears Open, Eyeballs Click, Black Friday, Dark Dawn series. He is a decorated Marine, and he's one of the proud. You know, few people become Marines, and even fewer become drill instructors. And he's also a believer, and he's here to talk to us today.
I got that Trinity, right? A Marine, DI, and Christian. Hey,
Yes, sir.
everybody. My name is Michael Nichols. I had the honor of serving 22 years federal service, 12 years active duty in the United States Marine Corps, and also 10 years at the Department of Veterans Affairs, processing disability claims for our servicemen and women. So I'm originally from Louisiana, joined the Marine Corps back in 1995, served to 2007. Got out, got in the convenience store industry for a couple of years, ended up back at the Department of Veterans Affairs, where I ended up serving 10 years before completely retiring from federal service and doing what I'm doing full time now, which is I'm in the fitness industry, helping service members transition out of the military into a career in the fitness industry. So that's a little bit about me. Happy to be on the show.
Well, don't let the numbers fool you. There are quite a few people that that actually watch. The issue that we're running into here is I I actually got nuked off of Facebook and Instagram. I don't know what I did. I don't know what I said. You know, I don't cuss in these videos. I don't, you know, I don't say anything crazy, but I don't know. Somebody heard something, or somebody got offended by one of the episodes that I did. So one day I went to go log into Facebook, and I am just like completely wiped out, nuked. Can't get in.
Mm.
Tried to make several other different accounts, and to no avail. The same thing with Instagram, and it really kind of sucks because that was the second biggest platform that I had. The first one was TikTok, But anyway, so like we were talking about a little bit earlier, I came across you on TikTok, and it immediately took me back because I don't remember how many I saw. I do know that I saw one of the first Black Friday Dark Dawns, and I specifically remember seeing you. I remember seeing you, and then I noticed that you had a TikTok and you had a YouTube, and I don't know, you just
Right.
came across my feed one day, and so I just got sucked into your videos. And one of the videos that I came across, you were talking about that you became a Christian after you were already a DI, and some of the hurdles that you had to go over, trying to balance the two here. So what I wanted to initially ask you was, what was your faith like before the Marine Corps?
Well, I mean, rewind back when I was a young boy. I came from a broken home, and so my dad and my mom ended up getting a divorce at a really, really young age. And so I ended up being raised by my grandma, who's now in heaven. But she was Southern Baptist, and every Sunday she'd go to church, and because we live with her, it wasn't it's almost like the Christian walk, what the foundation was laid before I even was cognizant of that process. Meaning that, like, every Sunday, my grandmother would wake up, make us breakfast, and like, okay, get ready for church. And she didn't even have a vehicle. Like, the church actually had a van that would come and pick us up every Sunday. And
Wow.
so from being a little kid, all I remember is just getting up, being with my grandma, and every Sunday we'd go to church, and then after church we would find our way home and and so the foundation was there. The 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 aspect of going to church was there, but there wasn't really a relationship with Christ, meaning that anybody that's a Christian knows that, look, you can call yourself a believer, but until you get intimate with the Lord, and there's a relationship where he actually speaks to you and talks to you and guides you and directs you, you're just kind of going through the process, which is fine. You can belong to a church before you believe. And I think that, that's, Jesus said it best, come as you are, meaning that
Right.
you don't have it all figured out. Just show up and let God do what he does best, which is unpeel the onion and help develop to who you are going to become. And fast forward, I joined the Marine Corps. I wasn't really, I was just a typical Marine. I joined the Marine Corps and did what everybody did. I woke up on the weekends, we partied, we got drunk, we woke up with hangovers, and just living a normal life. Like, no part of that process included God in it.
Right.
And then I got down to the drill field, and before I got down to the drill field, like, God started showing me things like I was preordained and destined for certain things. And I don't think I've ever shared this publicly, but I'll share it with you. I did 4 years in the Marine Corps. I got stationed. My first duty station was Iwakuni, Japan. Then I got stationed at 29 Palms, California. And then about 6 months of being stationed there, they basically PCS me to the flight line.
Okay.
And yeah, I was a motor transport. My job was motor transport. I hated motor transport, but at the time, that was the only job I had available.
Right.
And and I had an opportunity to go refuel aircrafts. And out of every job I've ever done in motor transport, besides being a staff NCO and leading logistic convoys, that was the funnest job I've ever done. Meaning that,
Really.
the aircraft, they would call, and say, hey, these 600 birds need to be filled up. Of course I'm exaggerating, but
Right.
I would get my orders, I'd go do it, and I would go do it with, excellence, like I try to do as a Marine. And I don't know, something was really unique about it. And then I got to the point where I had to re-enlist or get out. And so
Right.
I wasn't ready to get out. And my career planner said, hey, Michael, well, Sergeant Nichols at the time, he said, hey, why don't you just, since you don't know what you want to do, why don't you re-enlist for 2 years? If you re-enlist for 2 years, you'll remain doing what you like to do. Well, what he didn't tell me is, the career planner, what he didn't tell me is, if you reenlist for 2 years, yes, you will stay on that duty station, but they can change your unit. He didn't tell me that, right? And so I went from refueling
Dang.
aircrafts. I re-enlisted on a commandant's aircraft,
Right.
and 30 days later, I had orders to the infantry. And I was like, "Oh my God, I didn't re-enlist to go to the grunts. I re-enlisted to refuel aircrafts." And I had no desire to go to First Battalion, Seventh Marines. Actually, I got orders to 27, but
Mm.
when I checked in, 27 was already on a 6-month deployment to Okinawa, so they switched my orders to First Battalion, Seventh Marines. So
Wow.
I went from enjoying what I was doing to, oh shit, like I'm with the grunts, like when you're with the grunts, you're gonna be working your ass off. And so I
Yep.
checked into my unit, and the gunnery sergeant, he was a former DI,
Mm,
and he was like, "Hey, welcome aboard. Go home, pack your shit, you go into the field." And it was just straight. There was no, hey, Sergeant, welcome to the infantry.
no.
It's just straight, straight to business. It wasn't like, hey, let's finish checking in. He was like,
Right.
go get your shit, you go into the field. And so I went home, grabbed my shit, and from day one, I was basically in the field, with the infantry. But I did know that I had a desire to be a drill instructor, and
Right.
so what I ended up doing is about 6 months into me being with the infantry, I realized, okay, I have to become a drill instructor before I get out of the Marine Corps. And so
Right.
I put in the package, and the package has to go through your low level chain of command, and has to run up to the battalion commander. Long
Right.
story short, it got approved. And then it gets submitted to headquarters Marine Corps. Well, the gunny and I never saw eye to eye. From day one, as soon as I checked in, he wanted to send me to the field. Him and
Mm,
I didn't see eye to eye. So, meaning that even though that I put in my package, it went up to the chain of command. I'm sitting there waiting for orders to go to the drill field,
right.
and then he was like just harassing me nonstop. I don't know why he was harassing me, but I wasn't. I was a top tier Marine, meaning that
Right.
I kicked ass, took names,
Right.
and everybody wanted me on their team. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
So I started going out to the field and started making a good name for myself. So all the grunts, every time we went out on the field op, they started to request me, say, hey, we got this operation going on in the field for 2 months. Hey, can you please make sure you send Sergeant Nichols, right? And they would tell the gunny that, and the gunny would come back and play. Oh, so now you think you're a hard charger, and you're out in the field, and everybody's requesting you because you're good or something. I was like, look, gunny, I can't. Look, why don't you just come to the field and see what I do? And he's like, I ain't going
Right.
to the field. Matter of fact, you ain't going to the field now. So I went from I don't like you. Go to the field. I started making a name for myself in the field. Then basically started pulling me off of the field ops just to mess with me. And then I'm like, I'm over this crap. Like I got
Yeah.
1 year left on my contract. I was like,
Right.
hey, Gunny, hey, do you know what's the status with my orders to the drill field? He's like, oh, they didn't tell you your orders got denied. You're not going to drill field. And matter of fact, pack your bags. You're going back out to the field. I was like, fuck it. I'm done. I'm getting
Yeah.
out of the Marine Corps. I'm not dealing with this stupid shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
That's a
and,
way to
and look,
squash your mojo.
yeah, and forgive me for cursing. Look,
Oh
look,
no! Listen, you're being real.
forgive me for cursing. Like I'm just being real and authentic. Like I'm walking this thing out with Christ as well. But long story short, I was like, so I'm done. I'm getting out. And so uh, he told me my orders got denied, and I was basically gonna do my 1 year left and get out of the Marine Corps.
Right.
And a couple months later, I get a call from I think it was S3 or S1, and they say, "Hey, Sir Nichols, I need you to come down to the, S1 or S3. Your orders to Drillfield just came in." I was like, "Orders to Drillfield?" Gunny told me that my orders were denied and that I was, basically getting out of the military. I
Yeah.
I started TAPS, like I was 1 year
Right.
out from getting out. I already went to TAPS. And they were like, well, I don't know what to tell you, but your orders are here. You got approved to go to the drill field. You need to come down and sign them. So now
Right.
I'm stuck in the pickle. All right, Lord, I'm getting out of the Marine Corps. I already went to TAPS, but the gunny doesn't like me. And I just had these, all this crap going on in my mind.
Yeah.
And so if you know anything about the military, is once you get orders, if you do not accept those orders, you finish out your contract and you can never re-enlist ever again.
Yep.
Well, I was stuck in a pickle, and I already went to TAPS. I was like, I'm done. I went down to S1 or S3, and I denied orders to the drill field. Basically means that I already went to TAPS, I already got a
Right.
plan getting out, and I'm done. I'm moving on.
Right.
So I had about 6 months left. They deployed me to Okinawa. In Okinawa, I right before we were coming back back to main side or back to stateside, I got my checkout paperwork and I started checking out all the, from, supply and everything in between.
Right.
And then I went to S1 and the one officer's like, Devil, what are you doing getting out? I was like, I told him the story. I said, hey, I want to go to the drill field. I submitted my package. The gunny told me I was denied. My package to go to the drill field was denied. I went to TAPS. And so, right before we came on this deployment, he told me that it was denied. So, I denied orders. I was getting out. He's like, Devil Dog, you cannot get out until you become a Marine Corps drill instructor. And matter of fact, it's like almost like God interceding on in my
Yeah.
life, saying, hey, I know I have big plans for you, but I need you to go do this job. And so
Yeah.
I'm sitting there talking to the S1 officer, and he said, hey, me and the drill field monitor were DIs together on the drill field. I will call him right now and get you orders to the drill field. Do you want to be a Marine Corps drill instructor? And this is my checkout sheet. Like I got a month and a half left in the Marine Corps, and I'm out of the Marine Corps.
Were you married?
And I was married at the time to
Oh,
my
my
first
wife
wife,
would
yes.
my wife would have killed me.
And so like I'm on a 6 month deployment in Japan, and I'm coming back from Japan in August, and I'm getting out of the Marine Corps in September. And I am 1 month out from getting out of the Marine Corps, and the chief warrant officer intercedes. I believe God
Yeah.
sent him at the right time, at the right place, to
Right.
intercede and course correct my decisions that I was making. He said, "Look, I don't care what the gunny said. I don't care what happened. You're the epitome of what a DI is supposed to be, and a perfect example of a Marine that needs to go on to the drill field and train recruits to become a United States Marine. Do you want to be a DI?" And he picked up the phone right there, and he called headquarters Marine Corps and said, "Hey, I got this sergeant. Here's what happened. Here's the story. Can you get him orders to the drill field?" So now mind this. I was supposed to be on the drill field January of 2000. I denied orders. And so 6 months later, I'm getting ready to get out of Marine Corps. Then he calls the DI monitor. The DI monitor gives me orders for the second time in 1 year, which never happens. I was supposed to go in January. I denied orders. I was getting out of the Marine Corps. Then the warrant officer interceded and he said, "Hey, I got your orders to drill field." October of 2000, I had orders to go back to drill field. But here was the stipulation, because I already denied orders to the
Yeah.
drill field, I basically could not re-enlist. And so they had to work with I couldn't re-enlist. So they basically gave me orders to the drill field. Pending re-enlistment, I can only re-enlist if I graduated drill instructor school. And so on my last day of DI school, I raised my right
That's
hand and I re-enlisted for 4 more years,
okay.
which is which is extremely unique. If you know anything
Yeah.
about the military, getting
Yeah.
orders once to the drill field is extremely challenging and very hard. Getting orders twice in the same year, only by the grace of God. I'm gonna just pause right there and just let that sink in for a second.
That's for the people that watch the show that aren't military and don't know what he's talking about. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen.
It never happens.
No,
And
that
so I
doesn't
ended up
happen.
getting orders twice in 1 year. And it was just a good indicator. Okay, God has something different for me, something different than I was seeing. And
Right.
even though I wasn't walking with Christ, I always let him intercede on my behalf. I always knew
Yeah.
I was cognizant of that because of my upbringing with my grandma, but I wasn't talking to God like, "Hey, Lord, I'm gonna go get my checkout sheet."
Right.
And like my relationship now is like, Lord, like if I was the relationship I have with Christ now, if I had it back then, I'd be like, "All right, Lord, I'm getting out of the Marine Corps. If you want me to stay in the Marine Corps, through this process, intercede on my behalf, make make things change, and I'm willing and able to course correct if I'm wrong.
Right.
Well, God just interceded on my behalf and said, "Hey, you know something? You're not getting it out. You're going to the drill field. You're gonna become a Marine Corps drill instructor because I have bigger plans for you." And so I go down to the drill field. I graduated DI school. I reenlist. I go across the street to be a Marine Corps drill instructor. And if anybody is listening and knows, when you think of Marine Corps drill instructors, you think of intensity, speed, volume, relentless, have no personality, just destroy recruits to become Marines. And that's how I was trained. I was trained by other DIs that had been on the depot way before me, and they would push me to push recruits to the point of failure, right? And that's just the hate and discontent was part of that process. On my second cycle, so my first cycle, I don't think I got in trouble with my first cycle, not at all. My second cycle on T10, training day 10, here's what happens. And this is for everybody. Every recruit that goes to recruit training on the training day 10, the senior drill instructor sits them down and they have the recruits write a letter to the senior drill instructor, the good, the bad, and indifferent. And on those T10 surveys, Sergeant Nichols at the time had 44 allegations of being too aggressive with recruits, meaning that I wasn't maliciously punching a recruit or kicking
Yeah.
them or spitting on them, but I was physically demanding. Like I would grab a recruit, and if they were moving slow, I would help them move faster. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, you're getting
Um,
snatched up.
yeah, you're getting snatched up. So I had 44 allegations. And so I went from being the best new drill instructor to being in trouble to, okay, what are they going to do with Sergeant Nichols? Well, what they
Uh-oh.
ended up doing is I
Something happened with
started,
your feet. Oh, there you go.
I, so what happened was it started off where I started that cycle off on the third deck. I was
Right.
platoon 1079. I had T10 surveys. I'm 2.5 weeks into training these recruits, and I get in trouble because I had 44 allegations. So they ended up switching me, a sergeant on the bottom deck, and me. He went to the third deck. I went to the first deck because of all the allegations and to give me a fresh start. Matter of fact, I was just doing a TikTok about this. I haven't posted it yet. Where, when you're DI, normally only train, up to 91 recruits
Right.
at, during the cycle. Well, because I got in trouble, I had an opportunity to train 180 recruits to become United States Marines. Because, you start off on the third deck,
Right.
they're used to me. They were like, man, stay away from this guy. Then they send me to the bottom deck. So I bring that hate and discontent to the bottom deck. And then every time I would see my original platoon, I would mess with them, like, come here, and so like I was a new DI. Like my job was to destroy recruits to become United States Marines.
Right.
And so that was my only cycle where I trained 180 recruits to become United States Marines. And in this process, I what I realized is around my third cycle is okay, I can train recruits and keep getting in trouble, or I could start making some adjustments. And so I started making some adjustments, but I wasn't walking with Christ. And then I got in trouble again. And when I got in trouble this time, I got sat on the bench and I was on the verge of getting, there's a thing called RFC, relief for cause. And I was on the verge of getting relief for cause, meaning that not only did they switch me my second cycle, I got in trouble with my third, and got in trouble with my fourth cycle. So my first 3 to 4 cycles, I was in a lot of trouble. And it just so happened to be where I grabbed one recruit and he writes his mom writes Congress comes down to, Marine Corps. I was just getting in trouble nonstop.
Yeah.
I just getting in trouble nonstop.
Oh, trust
And
me,
then,
I get complaints all the time.
well, you understand, like being out
Oh,
there in the trenches, it's
yeah.
hard. It's, and like And finally, I was in the middle of this pickle. I had 30 days. I had 30 days until I found out my faith. Would I be relieved, get kicked out of the Marine Corps, or would I have a chance to stay in the Marine Corps and go on and do good things?
Right.
And I was with my girlfriend at the time. She's my wife now. We've been married for 3 years.
Wow.
She
Congrats.
said, babe, thank you. She said, babe, you need to go talk to your sergeant major. I was like, I can't stand him. I ain't talking to him. And then finally, like my wife and I, my girlfriend at the time, fiance at the time, we started like deep diving into the Bible. Like I would wake up and I'd read the Bible. I would basically everything I did, I was just on fire for Christ. And then finally, God spoke to me. He said, "Hey, go knock on the sergeant major's door and tell him you gave your life to Christ." And so, Sergeant Major Williams is a black guy, and he basically said a couple weeks before, "You're done. You will never train another recruit to become a United States Marine. Soon as this NJP paperwork comes through, you're done. You're out of the Marine Corps. You're no longer training recruits." So
Mm.
I deep dived into Christ and said, "Lord, if you have something better for me, can you please remove this burden that's upon me and being kicked out?" And so I went and knocked on his door and said, "Sergeant Major, can I talk to you?" He said, "What do you want?" Because he loved me so much, you know. He couldn't wait to see me. Like hey, we literally, I hated him and he hated me at that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
But then I humbled myself and gave my
Right.
life to Christ in this weird moment. And when I say give your life to Christ, like everybody says, the Bible talks about repent and go the other way, right? If
Right.
you repent and you keep going in that same direction, you're going to keep getting in trouble and keep having the same issues.
Right.
I literally repented and did a 360 and went the other way, or a 180 and went the other way. And I ended up knocking on his door and I said, "Hey, Sergeant Major, can I talk to you?" And he was like, "What do you want?" And so I said, "Hey, Sergeant Major, I got to tell you what's been going on in my life." And long story short, it went from being a 5 minute conversation to a 2.5, 3 hour conversation
Yeah.
of him telling me how somebody gave him a second chance. And because he can see the authenticity in my spirit and who I was, he said, "I'm gonna give you another chance." And if he didn't give me another chance, you wouldn't know who Staff Sergeant Nichols is. Nobody
Yeah.
would know. And so that's how I know that I was preordained and destined to be a Marine, preordained and destined to be a Marine Corps drill instructor because I got orders twice in 1 year.
Right.
And I wasn't even supposed to make it to become a senior drill instructor because I was supposed to be relieved for cause. And that didn't happen because God, I believe why people know who I am. And then anybody asks me why you're a platoon. I believe that God saw me in the middle of all the chaos that was happening on the drill field. He
Right.
saw a man that was after God's heart, like David, and he
Right.
said, "I can trust you with that mantle." And so from that point forward, I changed the trajectory on how I train recruits, how I train drill instructors. And long story short, my platoon, when I became a senior, ended up getting filmed in the documentary. And voila, here we are.
I just for old time's sake, I was like, I told my wife when I told my wife who you were, she was like, I think I remember you showing me his stuff like forever ago. She's like, that was a long time ago. I was like, it's been a hot minute. She's like, yeah, he's the one from the movies, right? I was like, yeah, and I'm like, they still got to be out there, and so it was a little bit harder to find. I didn't
It's
know
on
if
my
you
it's
do
on
that.
my website now. It's on
Okay,
staffsergeantnichols.com. So you can stream it live. So if anybody wants to see the documentary, it started off as Ears Open Elbows Click, and
right.
then my entertainment company now owns all the footage. So we
Oh,
ended up
okay,
releasing six new films: Black Friday, Dark Dawn, the whole Dark
okay,
Dawn series. And
right.
so a lot of people have seen all seven films.
And so I do you also stream to Vimeo?
Yes, it's on Vimeo. Yep.
Okay, all right, good. Because I was like, oh man, I hope I
Yeah.
didn't pirate his movies.
No, no. So through my website, so we stream everything through Vimeo, but you can
Okay.
find it through stasslernichols.com.
So just this past week, um, I was like, man, I gotta rewatch some of the stuff.
Yeah.
My wife Kim, I was like, you wanna see? Like, well, she was like, yeah, sure. And she was watching it. She was probably she couldn't have been any more than 15 minutes. And she was like, I'm so stressed out and I don't even know what to do. She was like, I don't understand how they're so dumb. Like, how do they keep screwing up? And I'm like, man, I know. I was like, I just remember being on the other side of that and getting
Yeah.
blasted. Like, I'm like, this sounds bad, but now that I'm a cop, this really sounds bad. I deal with stupid people
Yeah.
all day long. And so, like, even things as simple as, as just marching, it, when somebody screwed up, and it was either you or one of the other drill instructors just like,
Yeah.
she was like, oh no. And we just see a recruit just disappear.
Yeah.
Um, but I wanted to ask you, so the foundation was already kind of set there, right? So in your childhood, grandma was, you had a solid biblical foundation. The foundation work was there.
Yep.
What with you and your now wife, right? Why did you guys start getting back into the Bible? Did she get you into it, or did I guess what I'm asking here is when did it click? Like when did the lights turn on for you?
Well, I think it went back to originally, okay, love seems to wither away. Like, we fall in love with things and then we fall out of love with things. For example, you could fall in love with the person that he or she's the best person since sliced bread. 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, 30 years down the road, love is no longer there. You end up going your own separate way. And so her and I both were in previous relationships, and we both went through some hard times, and we both said we didn't want to say we loved each other to each other because love seems to wither away. And
Right.
so we tried to come up with another word for love, but of course we ended up there's no other word that can actually articulate how you feel on
Right.
love. And so one common denominator we both realize is that in my previous relationships, we never put God in the middle of it. In her previous relationship, she didn't put God in it. And
Yep.
so within 2 to 5 years, the relationship went from love to I hate you. Uh, and so both of us made a decision that, maybe we should put God in the center of everything that we're doing. We can live our life, but no matter how late we stay out on Saturday night, we need to be committed to go to church on Sunday.
Right.
And so on Saturday nights, we would go downtown, we would go dance, and that's how we kind of like, spend our time. We'd like to go dancing, we'd like to have fun with our friends. And no matter how late we stayed out or how much we drank that night, we would still get up on Sunday and go to church. And so what ended up happening is week after week and month after month, instead of staying out to 3 o'clock in the morning, we started, oh, let's get in by 2. And then 2 to 1. And next thing you know, we're like, okay, let's skip tonight. Maybe we'll go next weekend. And next thing you know, because you start going to church,
Right.
the things that are negative in your life slowly but surely start to wither away.
Right.
The more you lean into Christ, the more light happens and the darkness kind of starts to fade. The further you're away from Christ, the darker it seems. And what we realized is that, okay, we started going to church, and every Sunday, no matter what we did, we would show up to church. There was moments where we would show up hungover and smelled like
Yeah.
alcohol, but we're in there praising God.
Yeah.
And slowly but surely, we just, that lifestyle kind of faded, and a different lifestyle kind of came to fruition for her and I. But what really made me press in to the point where I can hear God's voice was, even though that I was going to church on Sunday, I would still go to work as a DI and I was still getting in trouble as a drill instructor.
Right.
And so I really had to change and do a 180 and go the other way so I didn't lose my career. And
Yeah.
I was at a pivotal moment where I truly give my life to Christ. Like I was going to church, I was praising God, but I wasn't walking with Christ. I wasn't training recruits the way God wanted me to train recruits. I was training recruits on how I was trained to train recruits.
Right.
And so that's kind of how things kind of pivoted in my life, and fast forward many, many, many years later, here we are in the conversation.
So, okay. So my next question to you is, what were the so I know this because I'm a Marine, okay? But for everybody that's not a Marine, I don't think they know just how intense the Marine Corps drill instructor life is. Could you just take me through? You wake up in the morning till you go to bed at night. Like what is a daily walk in the shoes of a drill instructor look like?
It looks like this. You're up at 3:30 in the morning. You get your gear, you head to base. Uh, a half an hour to an hour before the recruits wake up, you're walking, you're walking in the squad bay, you're checking for things out of order, you're checking to make sure that Firewatch knows how to report their post. Then 5:30, 05:30 rolls around, lights come on, accountability check. You getting everybody online and basically counting everybody off to make sure that if you had 91 recruits when you went to bed, you should have 91 recruits when you wake up. And those counts happen throughout the night because recruits end up, going unauthorized, and they basically try to run away. And then once you get them through that process, depending on the training card of the day depends on what you do. There's moments where you wake up and you got to be at the chow hall in 5 minutes. There's moments you wake up and you don't have chow until 07:30. So depending on what that schedule for the day is, it depends on what you do. But here's what you will do. You will wake the recruits up. You will count them off. You will send them to the head to make a head call. You will get them back online. You will dress them by the numbers. When I say dress by the numbers, left sock coming on right now, 2019, 18, 17, 16, 50. You're counting recruits through this process. You're taking them through a methodical process for instant willingness, obedience to orders. And the whole purpose of that is when you're in combat, I don't need to question orders. I need to execute orders. That's why we start indoctrinating recruits to follow what the frick I say. And as a senior leader, you should trust your leaders before you. Of course, if it's unethical, immoral, or illegal, you
Right.
don't follow that orders. But most leaders are out there doing the right thing. And so you get them dressed, you make the racks, you clean the house, you get them in formation, you march to and from chow, you come back from chow, you either go to physical fitness training or you go to the House of Knowledge, which is basically you go learn about the Marine Corps, Marine Corps history, the armed forces. You learn the rules of engagement. You learn there's so much happening on a daily basis, and it doesn't stop. Like if you go to the House of Knowledge in the morning, you're going to PT in the afternoon. If you go to PT in the morning, you're going to the House of Knowledge in the afternoon, and it doesn't stop.
Right.
And every moment that you have as a drill instructor, it is never quiet. Like you would never, like very rarely do you ever walk into a house within the first 2 months of training and it's quiet and recruits are just sitting there studying their knowledge. It is always some kind of hate and discontent.
Yeah.
And as a new drill instructor, your job is to cause that hate and discontent. When you're a senior and when you're a J, your job is to make sure that they're ready for inspection, they're ready for drill, and make sure that, yes, we go out and we do the house of knowledge and we do the physical fitness training, but the J and the senior are just trying to guide the platoon to hit these benchmarks to make sure they're successful. For example, um, when I was down there as a DI, we had initial drill on T17, training day 17, which was on a Saturday. I know it's not like that anymore, but our job is to take them through all these drill cards to make sure that the recruits knew how to execute these drill cards. And on training day 17, you would take them out and you would do initial drill. And if your platoon did crappy on initial drill, it was the longest day of your entire life as a recruit because, the senior would go home and the recruits would just get destroyed for the rest of the day. So I just kind of pause right there. Long story short, from sunup to sundown, we're working these young men and women.
So, how much of this so one of the things that clicked for my wife the other night watching it is, you know, I think she finally understood not just the yelling and the spastic, every now and then it's cursing, but like it probably had to be cleaned up for the movie. But the guttural screaming, like long drawn out screaming, I think she finally realized because we actually just watched, I believe the movie was Warfare. It's one of
Yeah, I
the
want to watch that. The new one. Yeah. Yeah. I want to
it
watch it.
it's based off of true events. I mean, it wasn't a bad movie. It wasn't a bad movie. It's not what I thought it was going to be. But it when they hit the first IED and the way he screamed sounded exactly like a drill instructor. It sounded exactly what Marines sound like when they hit IEDs. They actually did a really good job with the acting in the movie. Sometimes, I mean, some people might think of probably a little bit too good of a job.
Right.
Um, but she finally was like, I think I get it. They're trying to make you guys, first of all, short, sharp, fast, speed intensity. They want to make sure that you guys aren't just lollygagging around. Like when you got to go somewhere, you're moving, right?
Yeah.
And they want to make sure that you're sharp. In addition to that, she was like, it's almost like you're being drowned. And this sounds like such a female thing to say, but this is how she understands it. She was like, it's almost like they're trying to make you impervious to trauma. They're trying
Yeah.
to make it to where you are inoculated so that you don't freeze up and lock up when you hear people screaming like that. To the recruit, it just sounds like this guy's crazy and he's screaming, ah, in my
Yeah.
face. Even the high pitched screams that some of the drill instructors, you know what I mean? Um, she was like, "That's what they're doing. They're mimicking what it sounds like in combat."
We're causing chaos in a chaotic way to expose people's weaknesses, right?
Right,
Like at the end of the day, we're taking people from every walk of life. Some people are afraid of heights. Some people are afraid of the water. Are afraid of people yelling at them. Some people are afraid. The list goes on and on. Our job as DIs is to expose that weakness because if we can expose it, then we can crush it first and foremost.
right,
You're afraid of heights? Okay, we're going to throw you off the top of the water tower, and we're going to keep doing it until you get past it. If you're afraid of the water, we're going to throw you in the water and watch you squeal like a pig until you figure it out. It's tough love, right?
right.
Like there was moments when I was a recruit, if my drill instructors didn't just lose their freaking mind and I was forced to do it, I don't think I would have got past that training, you know, that training block or that training mission. And that's what we need. We need people that are leaders that go before us, that have been there, done that, got the t-shirts, and help drag other people through that as well. And that's how we get acclimated, and that's how we become the best fighting force in the world.
I think that is that is honestly, I think Marine Corps drill instructor just needs to be its own branch entirely. And I actually had this idea weird years ago. I was like, they just need to be their own branch, and they just need to be sent out to train everybody, right? They need to train cops, they need to train paramedics, they need to train firefighters, and it was kind of this run-on joke that I had. But in a way, we need strong, hard men to teach men how to be men, and that's so missing. That's so missing right now, and honestly, it's kind of showing. And it's
Yeah.
uh, you know,
But here's the thing that you have to realize. It did not click for me 100% until I truly gave my life to Christ. And I was balancing the two of being hardcore and doing it with righteousness. That's when it really made an impact. My first four cycles, I fumbled through it, almost got relieved. And my last four cycles, I leaned in. I was hard, but I was fair and I was compassionate and I it was just different. It's hard to explain.
so I So this is probably going to lump into a couple of different questions. I mean, because I had different areas that I wanted to hit, but this is all kind of like coming together.
Yeah, let's let it flow organically.
So, um, okay, how many times did you deploy to Iraq?
One time,
One time.
2006 to 2007.
Okay. Um, I've heard some of your earlier stuff, and if you want to talk about it, that's fine. If not, that's fine too. But this was after you were saved, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So I
Okay.
got saved when I was on the drill field and then went to combat a couple years later. So I left the drill field January 2004 and I found myself in Iraq in August of 2006. So 2.5 years later.
So you'll see where I'm going at here in a second. When I first deployed to Afghanistan, when we when we were going to Musa Kala, the generation before me, my seniors, they didn't want to admit it, but none of them had any combat experience. And so
Right.
like they were coming off of a previous deployment, and obviously they can't not act tough around the new guy, right? But we were
Right.
still very much in the same boat in that they were scared too. And this was uncharted territory. This is Afghan too. And where we were going, it was no man's land. And we were we were taking over for the Royal Marines, right? Our first deployment, it, it was everything about it was just bad. It was just bad. It was wrong place, wrong time. Here's the thing: we had some hellacious warfighters, um, guys that I still think about to this day. But and we did lose a number of Marines on my deployment. You know, our second deployment when we went back to Kajaki, it was still bad, but it was nowhere near as bad as the first one to Musa Kala. I was in this weird spot in that I had some other friends of mine, one of my seniors that kind of took me under his wing, and he showed me everything, right? He he's in large part why I'm still here, aside from the grace of God. He he was very cynical, and he saw that when he met me, he saw a Marine that had hope. And so it was almost kind of like a jaded older brother looking out for a younger brother and wanting
Right.
almost in a way to protect that innocence. You know what I mean? I was still
Yeah.
very, I mean, I wasn't innocent as in I was a child, but I wasn't. I hadn't seen the world through the eyes that he had seen them through yet. And, you know, he had a really rough time in Ramadi. And so one of the things, though, is that, you know, he always used to make fun of me for it. But at the time, and even now, I didn't know what I believed necessarily in the way that I do now. You know what I mean? Like now I know the truth, right? Like John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no man comes to the Father except through me, period. Like I know the truth.
Right.
Back then I didn't know it like I know it now, but I never played with God. Does that make sense? Like, you
Hmm.
know what I mean? I had a certain fear of God. I was never, there's people, some people in your units or even in the department, they're just staunch atheists and they have no problem telling you that, right?
Yeah. And they mock God, and yeah,
And
I
they
get it.
they mock God, and they think you're an idiot, or that you believe in Santa Claus and all this other stuff. But here's the one thing that again, like I said, I never played with God. I never played like that. And I prayed on every foot patrol that I went on. I I've never felt closer to God than when I was in Afghanistan. And that's because I had nothing else than to just talk to him all day, step by step, and literally trusting him for every step. And there were times where I, like the math doesn't math. The math isn't math in there. Like I should not be here. I should have
Right.
died.
Right.
Um, and there's just no other. I had no other explanation for it at the time, and even more so now. And where it all kind of clicked for me, like I said, I don't know if I was just hard headed, but I still didn't even get it then. It wasn't until I got out and I became a cop that I had to understand how the law worked. I had to understand how punishment worked. I had to understand the court system. I had to understand what a judge was. I had to understand what justice was. I had to understand these things. And it wasn't until I had fully grasped all of that that the lights finally clicked and turned on. And I was able to look back and I saw that God, long before I committed my life to Him, that was Him that saved me from every daisy chain IED.
Yeah.
That was Him that saved me from every 7.62 by 3.9 that hit the back wall. That was Him. That was Him that anytime I was running code, flying lights and sirens, doing 120 miles an hour, and somebody pulls out in front of me and I miss them by fractions of an inch, right? That was Him. Any time that I've ever conducted a traffic stop and the guy had a gun like wedged in between the seat and there was tons of dope in the car and he was protecting me the entire time. And it was like when it had come back around full scale, full circle, I realized the truth and I knew you know what you know now, and now you're accountable for what you know. And your job is still pretty dangerous. I mean, I almost died about 6 months ago. Again, in a very different way than I thought that I was going to go out. Like it was not like glorious. It wasn't going to be on a movie. It wasn't going to be on a documentary. There's no blaze of glory. It was not how I thought of. Um, it was, I got called to back up a friend of mine who's also a Marine. Who's
Okay.
also a Marine. and it was just a petty theft at Walmart, right? And so they have this guy in the loss prevention office, and so I go in, and the guy was a junkie. I mean, he was stealing stupid stuff like toothpaste, doorknobs,
Right, right.
just stuff that didn't even make sense. And so the guy is sitting down, handcuffed, and a buddy of mine, he's going back and forth trying to get like the footage, the camera footage, so that we can add it to the case and stuff. And he was like, "Hey, man, his bag's over there. You mind going through his bag real quick?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, no big deal." And so I just have to inventory his bag and make sure that he doesn't have any extra items that we might have missed. And inside it, there's like, you know, I I know for the younger listeners, there used to be this thing that they had called CDs, and they used to have CD cases. So, so this guy had like this. It looked like this denim CD case, right?
Right.
Um, that I took out of his book bag, and I unzipped it, and the zipper was caught, and then I finally forced it open. You ever like open a pack of M&Ms too hard and everything goes flying?
Yeah.
Same thing happened. Poof.
Didn't know.
Yep. Yep. Fell out. Had to get loaded up into an ambulance. And next thing I'm seeing the double doors of the back of the inside of the ambulance, and I it could have been the fentanyl, but I right before they hit me with the Narcan, which is nasty. It is awful stuff. Disgusting. But it works. It's so weird. I could feel myself slipping. And I wasn't scared. I had only one thought in my mind. Or two thoughts. Man, I didn't think I
Today
didn't
was
think
the
it was
day.
I didn't think I was going to go out like this. I wasn't in a glorious gun battle. That was the first thought I had. And the second thought I had was, I am so glad I gave my life to Christ. But this is what I wanted to circle back around and ask you. How did you deal with deployment after you were a Christian?
Well, I think I shared this on a recent TikTok, but I'll share it with your audience. I was really struggling on, when you're a DI, you do that for 3 years. It kind of becomes your mantra, where when you go back to the fleet, that means you're no longer training recruits to become Marines. Your natural persona is people like, hey, stay away from him. He was a DI. All you're gonna do is basically correct you, jump on you, hold you accountable. Basically, do our job, right? Like do
Yeah.
your job as a leader. But you get labeled as, oh, he's only treating us like that because he was a former DI. Well, I really, I was already walking with Christ for over 2 years. So
Yeah.
I, s- when I got my platoon, I already knew we were going to combat. I already knew we were going to Iraq. And so I brought all my Marines in. I had like 35 to 45. I don't remember how many, somewhere around 35, 45. I brought them all in and just had a conversation like you and I sitting there right here. Hey, look, yes, guys, I was on the drill field. And do I have the intensity to turn it up and cause hate and discontent? Yes. But I'm not here to do that. I'm here to lead you, to guide you, to mentor you, and to motivate and inspire you to be the best version of yourself. Now, don't get that twisted. Don't take my kindness for weakness because I'm having a conversation with you. Now you think, oh, yeah, he's chill, he's cool. Um, I said, from this point forward, after we have this manly conversation, you will be held accountable.
Right.
And let's just say, I don't know what happened. All I remember is having a civil conversation with my Marines. And I don't know if it was the next morning or a couple weeks later. We had to be at the armory at 0330, because when you go to the rifle range or you go to the field, you got to be there at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning because it's there's so much going on. And I just remember showing up, and half of my platoon was not there at the appointed place of duty. And from that point forward, I went back. I, I went back. I wouldn't say DI mode. I went back to uh, moving Marines with speed, intensity, and volume. That's the way I looked at it.
Okay.
And let's just put it this way. I was yelling, I was cursing, Lord forgive me, and I was basically starting to run people up the flagpole. I freaking told you this, that, and the other, right? Like I was knife handing and all this crap. Doing what we do as Marine Corps drill instructors, right? But
Right.
I wasn't
Right.
doing it from a Marine Corps drill instructor perspective. I was doing it because my Marines needed my structure.
Right.
And this went on for weeks, and I had recruits that wanted to go UA because I was treating them. So I was on them. You're gonna be at your point of place of duty. From that point forward, I just started turning up the intensity. Let's just put it that way. I started cooking the frogs slowly but surely, and I was just really struggling. Like, Lord, why can't they just follow my guidance, my direction? I'm struggling because internally. I'm a Christian. Externally, I got Marines I got to deal with that are gonna, if you allow them to, they'll walk all over you.
Yeah.
And so it was the 12th day of the month, and we were going to the chapel, the church, to sign our life insurance away to whoever we want to leave our benefits to. And I was just sitting down by myself because my Marines at that moment probably hated my guts because I was on their ass nonstop. And I was just really struggling. I was like, Lord, I need help. I need your guidance. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to turn off the intensity? Do you want me to turn it up more? And he said, open up the Bible. At that time, I was reading Proverbs every day, and it was the 12th day of the month. So I opened up Proverbs. Proverbs 12:1 says, those who love discipline love knowledge. Those who hate discipline are stupid. So the light bulb went off. God reminded me that in order to get your Marines prepped, prepared to combat and back home, if you have to be hardcore on them to get them back home safely, then
Right.
so be it.
Right.
And so be it. And each person got treated different. As a platoon, we got treated holistically one way, but individually, if you talk back, you were late, you were UA, yada yada yada. I got to the point where I had this black kid. His name was, I think his name was King, and like I was just put anybody that basically shine a light on their face and saying, "Hey, I'm doing something wrong." I was on them, right? I had some Marines that were late to work. I had some Marines that were belligerent. I had some that were, out of uniform regs. Whatever it was, I was on them. And this one kid, like I was on him nonstop. His name was King. And finally, he said to another sergeant of mine, he said, "Man, I don't know what it is about Staff Sergeant Nichols. He's racist. He don't like black people." He's like, "You," and then the sergeant knew at the time.
Oh no.
My wife is black Mexican. My wife is black Mexican and Filipino, right? So like the sergeant knew this, and the
Yeah.
sergeant said, "You're a fucking idiot. He's married to a black woman, you dumbass." And from that point forward, here's the thing about King. And King, if you ever come across this video, it was sad that you couldn't respect me as a leader. You only started respecting me once you knew I liked black people. That's the hard part. But long story short, the sergeant said, "You're a freaking idiot. He's married to a black woman." From that point forward, I never had another problem with that kid. He respected me. He thought I was cool.
Yeah.
But don't mess with Staff Sergeant Nichols. He knows not to mess with me. But that's the way life is sometimes. Sometimes you get to a point where you don't know what to do, and you got to lean on Christ to walk you through that process. As a cop, every day, you can go from 0 to 1,000 in a second, and
Yeah.
you wasn't even expecting it.
Yeah.
And being a Christian and taking my Marines to combat was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Being the DI is physically and mentally exhausting. Taking my Marines to combat was spiritually exhausting. spiritually exhausting because I was struggling between hardcore and walking with Christ, and between those two dichotomies. Um, let's just say I got all my Marines to combat back, but we did have some, some of my Marines get hit by IEDs.
I mean, it's war. I mean, that kind of stuff happens, unfortunately. This one of the things that when I got out, and again, this is coming from the perspective of somebody who wasn't saved yet. I would just say probably culturally Christian, I guess is kind of the term right now. Like you have all the Christianese, you have all the sayings, the lingo's there, but as far as you're not regenerated, you're not regenerated. There's no indwelling of the Holy Spirit. There's we're not bearing fruit yet, but it's still better than being completely the opposite, right? So I wasn't quite there yet. I was still kind of like over here. And when I got out, this is one of the, and still such a, and I don't know if I just, maybe it was just me. Maybe I just couldn't get out of my own way, but my, my ego was like the size of Texas. At my first department, I was the man, you know what I mean? And you
Marine
didn't
to combat operations. Now
Marine,
you're a cop. Yeah, I
Marine,
get
now
it.
I'm a cop, SWAT, it's just like, dude, I was the guy. Um, but the problem is that I I had built my empire on sand. It was all me and my accomplishment. And the God humbled me in the most humiliating way. What all kind of kicked this off for me is I got injured and I got hurt. I got messed up on a domestic. The worst part about it was, and it's always this way. It always happens when I either get beat up or or get put in the back of an ambulance. It's never even my call. It's always like I'm going to back somebody else up.
Yeah.
But anyway, I go to this domestic and I got kicked in the shoulder so hard that it completely blew my rotator cuff, tore my labrum, crushed. All this was crushed.
Wow.
And man, I never felt pain like that in my life. But here's the thing is that when they took me to the hospital, right? None of the pain meds were working, right? And then one of the nurses comes out of the back and he's got this long syringe, right? He's got this long syringe that was about as red as your shirt, right? And it
Mm.
has like all this metallic stuff in it. I'm like, what's that? And he just sticks me and he goes, this is Special K. Well, what the frick is that? Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, it's ketamine. Okay.
Mm.
He's like, see you later, man. That's the last thing that he said to me. And if you know anything about it, it's a psychedelic, and he gave me what you would call a heroic dose for all the all the people that are into psychedelics. That's what it's called. It's called a heroic dose. It's not like
Okay.
microdosing that they use for like clinical studies and stuff like that. No, no, no,
Yeah.
no, no. This is like you're going on a trip to Never Land, and that's
Wow.
essentially what happened. You hear these stories of people getting like in these like car accidents, injuries, stuff like that, and they get that, and when they do, they end up as like this savant, and they come out of it, and all of a sudden they can play the piano and stuff like that. That's not what happened with me at all. What happened with me is I came out with this insatiable fascination with reading that I
Okay.
did that I did not have before. And I just like I can't I just I would get so bored I would just fall asleep. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
And so at the time, I wasn't quite there yet. I wasn't, I was searching. And at this time, I was I was so into self-help that, I was just cleaning out the self-help aisle, and not like hippy dippy books. I mean, I read all of the Jocko books, Discipline Equals Freedom, Dichotomy of Leadership, Art of War, the Book of the Five Rings, Moyamoto Musashi, Sun Tzu, whole
So you
nine
just
yards.
came and started reading everything.
Everything. I was, absolutely everything. David Goggins, you name it. Like all
Yeah.
the guys, all the guys. I read everything. And I just felt like I was running out of time. And it wasn't until I came to that realization later where God finally turned the lights on for me.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was at this never ending hamster wheel that was only able to be kept alive and moving through my own ego and my own pride and my own energy. And I don't care how strong you are, I don't care how mentally tough you are, you're going to gas out eventually. If it's all on you, eventually you're going to crack. And, you know, I had completely given up on the VA at that point. Like, I wasn't doing therapy. I was trying to see a civilian therapist, and that guy, I mean, you don't want to be mean, but the guy that used to work at Staples
Yeah.
doesn't really like we're not relating here in our Afghan war stories.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's anyway, I had gotten to such a point, I almost completely destroyed my marriage. And my wife, God bless her, she's a saint. She's been with me day one that I hit the fleet. We got married, and
Well,
we got 4 kids, and she's put up with all my crap over the years, and I've moved all over the country. But it wasn't until I finally came to that realization that, and it showed up in the most spectacular fashion. I didn't go down every wrong route, but a lot of I took a lot of wrong turns on the way to Albuquerque, right? And the simplicity, I was watching this street evangelist, Ray Comfort, right? Have you seen him?
mm,
He's fantastic. So he actually goes to, I forget what beach it is out in California, but he walks on the boardwalks. He walks on the boardwalks, and he just walks up to random people and goes, "Hey, would you be willing to give an interview? I just wanted to ask you some spiritual questions and stuff." And most people, they want to be in front of a camera, right? So, and he just goes up to random people and,
yeah.
asks them, "Hey, what do you think happens to you when you die?" Like, and just that's how he starts off the conversation. And I got so sucked into it, right? Because it was real, it was authentic. It wasn't you couldn't fabricate this.
All right.
This wasn't scripted at all. And he wasn't shouting anybody down. He was just going up to people and asking, "Hey, what do you think about this? Like, what do you think? What do you think happens when you die?" That's how he always starts off his conversations, and they just flow from there. And it wasn't until he got to this kid named Mario, right? And this kid reminded me so much of me before I joined the Marine Corps. Um, this kid was saying all of the same stuff that I had been saying. And he said, I think you're a good kid. Like, you're well intentioned, but do you know what a false convert is? And the kid didn't know. And so he explained it to him. And this is essentially reminiscent of somebody that, they went, they prayed a prayer one time, and then that was it. And then, hey, I'm in the Christian camp now. And then they just go live their entire life however they want, right? And don't give it a second thought. And they always harken back to that anytime that they feel guilt. They're like, oh, well, I remember that one time where I prayed that prayer.
Right.
When he explained what it meant to actually repent and come to Christ, right? Like you were saying, because most people know that when you're talking about repent, they know the first half. And so they go, well, it means metanoia. It means to change your mind. Well, that is true, yes. But it also means to change direction, right? Like about face. And it's both. And most people don't realize that it's both. And when I finally understood that, the one thing that I was looking for, I was searching for all these books that I was reading for so long, getting sucked into the occult and my whole shenanigans with that. It was never, it never looked like it did in the movies. I mean, nobody told me I was the bad guy. You know what I mean? Like you never think, like the bad guy doesn't even think the bad guy is the bad guy. You always think you're the good guy. And
Right.
so, um, as it says, I had a form of godliness, but I denied the power thereof, right? Fraudulent, essentially. And I was to the point of, like I told you, I had gotten to the point to where I was gassed. I was smoked. I had nothing left in the tank. Nothing. There wasn't a drill instructor in the world that could have given me the energy to take another step further. I was done.
Done. Yeah.
Done. I can't even think about picking up my pack. It's done. I'm done. Right. Um, and I saw no way out. There was no way out to me. And the scary part is that my brain went to a place that's unfortunately all too common for military and first responders now. And essentially it was, I know how to stop this problem. And it's really quick.
Right.
And not going to say it exactly. You know what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
Because I'm not trying to get this yanked down immediately. But when I say God showed up, before I went through with it, I heard a man's voice yell loud at me. I was in my truck. I was secluded. I was back in the woods. I was all by myself. No one knew where I was, right? It was just me, and I was just crying, bawling my eyes out, just trying to work up the nerve to just get it over with. And when I heard stop, right?
Mm.
It freaked me out, and because I looked over and I thought I was going to see somebody like with their head like leaning into my window, like, what are you
Right.
doing? And there was no one. And this wasn't in my mind. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't high. Loud as a drill instructor. Stop. And I looked in my passenger seat and there was no one there, but I knew exactly who that was. And I just collapsed into my steering wheel and just buried my face into my steering wheel and just, I hadn't given my life yet to that point. And I felt, I'm like, my life is on spiritual life support. And it wasn't until about a couple of weeks later, I still had to work at the time. It's not like I was able to take 3 weeks off. Like I still had to go to calls, still had to work domestics, crashes, and was not in the mind frame to be doing any of this stuff. But honestly, I was just on autopilot. I was just cruising. But in between my calls, I was listening to sermon after sermon after sermon after sermon. And it was like, at this point, I didn't audibly hear it, but it was like I heard this voice in the back of my mind after I was done with every sermon. It was like, you're a little bit closer, keep going. And then I would listen to another sermon, right? And at a certain point, it got random to me, because I was panicking. I didn't know what was going on, but the only thing that I did know is that I'm running out of time, and spiritually I'm on life support right now. And eventually I came across Ray Comfort's videos, and when I figured out what a false convert was, that's when I realized he was with me in every gunfight. He was with me on every convoy. He was with me on every code run. He was with me on every traffic stop. And the last thing that he said, he answered the question that I had been searching for forever, which is, what's the truth? What's the whole point of all this? And you want to talk about getting a word from God, you take me straight to John 14:6. And Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no man comes to the Father except through me. And when he said that, again, in my cruiser, I buried my face in my steering wheel, crying hot tears, just crying out to God, please forgive me. Like, I've broken all your laws. Please just have mercy. Please just have mercy on me. Please forgive me. And from that moment on, I saw the world completely with different eyes. I mean, like the scales were ripped off of my eyes. And I'm still a cop at this point, and now I still have to be a cop. Which in some ways it made me better, it made me more compassionate, but at the same time it made me, it almost kind of made me feel like I lost that, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
That
yeah, the
yeah.
grit.
Um and anyway, which is like when I came back and when I saw you and you were talking about that, I'm like, that's the guy. I gotta talk. I gotta try. I gotta
Yeah,
try. I gotta
yeah.
talk to him.
Well, because you're still out there every day doing what you're doing, and you're still trying to walk out the Christ like, you know, example, and you're still out there dealing with people that are insane at moments, out of their mind, and you have to find a way to deal with them. Like I would not want to be in your shoes. You've been on both sides of the coin. You've been on the military combat operations, rounds coming down range side, and then now you're dealing with civilians, and those lines get blurred.
Yeah.
So, and when I say get blurred, I'm not even talking about the Christian walk. I'm talking about just the lines between military and the heightened intensity and the things that we do there, and then how we're supposed to be civil police,
Right.
police in our community, and then still trying. And then the third part of that process is doing it as a Christian.
So the it's funny. And I would have thought, I'm like, man, I'm chill. Like you should have seen me years ago. When I first got to the police department, they they extended me. So they have like 4 months of what they call FTO field training, right? And that's essentially where you follow a senior officer and you shadow them and then you work calls with them. And then as the phases go on, they get less and less involved by the end of it, which is fourth phase. And when you're in fourth phase, you're on your own, you're doing everything. You're the cop. He's just there to shadow and watch
Right,
and make sure,
right.
Um, and so my my the first department that I worked at, the police department here, they extended me a month, and they almost dropped. And this is after I graduated the police academy.
Right.
And one of the things that's the other thing too is that there seems to be the sentiment that like anybody can be a cop. It's actually really hard to get hired, and people don't know that. There's a lot of there's some people that you're like, dude, how did you get here? Right? You got. I'm sure that there's some Marines that you're like, how did you get
Yeah.
here?
Yeah. Exactly.
But for the most part, it's you got to jump through ridiculous amounts of rings just to get hired, and then you still have to make sure that you don't suck. And anyway, they actually almost dropped me entirely, and their thing is that I was too militaristic. And you want to know what's funny? Here's the better part of that, and here's where they ended up eating it. Is we had a high school shooting here at my high school, the high school that I went to school at. Now, this wasn't the one that you hear of down south that was like 17 were killed. It's not that one. But it was right on the heels of that, right? And I was still in FTO, so right now, so now I'm the boot, right? So I'm the new guy, and the call comes out, shots fired at our high school, and this is outside of our city jurisdiction. So technically, we're in the county is where the high school is. But when you
Right.
get that call, it doesn't matter.
Right. All
Everybody
hands on
is
deck.
hauling balls, and it is the Pepsi 400. And you got to imagine this is Florida, so like we got like old people in golf carts, grannies doing 35 miles an hour while they're like up here on the steering wheel, pulling out into traffic. So like when you're screaming down the highway, you are a missile. And that it's probably more terrifying getting there than it was actually dealing with the
Being
whole
it. Yeah.
situation.
Right.
Yeah, you're getting really close to Jesus when you're driving that fast. But 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 anyway, so we got there, and it was the type of thing that like, man, we had everybody. We had so I worked at the city at that point. So we had city PD, we had county sheriff, fish and game, FBI, we had detectives, we had SWAT, we had FHP. So we had state troopers. We just had this army of cops descending onto this high school. And as soon as we got up, we got a gaggle of like everybody. We got FBI, we got people everywhere. And they were like, who the hell knows the layout of this school? And I was like, well, I went to school
I do.
here. They're like, great job, dickhead. You're in the front. Okay, all right. So they got this picture, and it's all of us. This whole we're all sprinting into this high school, and man, it was awesome. But we really brought the violence of action that day, and it ended well, right? So we had no fatalities, thank God.
Thank
We had
God.
no fatalities. A student was injured, right? But the kid that shot him was a dumbass, and he like. So we have this Alice lock system on the doors, so that like when they automatically lock, like, dude, it's a prison. You're not getting in anywhere. So he tried to shoot in like under the door, and
Yeah.
I feel bad for the kid. The kid, like, he's never going to walk right again. I mean, he got him right in the ankle with a shotgun, but the kid lived, obviously. Anyway, and the shooter surrendered. But after they saw that and they saw the violence of action and that and another, like, shots fired call that we had where, dude, I was like,
Yeah. You were the
rant.
man. Hey, if something,
Yep.
so you went from potentially washing out to, oh my God, this guy is an asset.
Yeah, like, okay, all right, yeah, all right, yeah.
Yeah.
We can have him hug some teddy bears on the side to work with him a little bit, but and this brings me to my last thing. We've been talking for a while, and I'm sure you got stuff to do, but so here's what I wanted to get at. So I've noticed Marines, a lot of my friends, I've gotten one too many phone calls at 2:00 in the morning saying, "Hey, Travis, he checked out,"
Yeah.
or "Hey, man, Charlie's not here anymore,"
Yep.
And it goes the same way. I'll get a random phone call, and then I used to have Facebook before I got nuked, but now I see it on my wife's Facebook. So anybody, if you want to add me or whatever, my wife's Facebook, Kimberly Lauren, I'll put the information in there. But I'll see a vague Facebook post, and it'll say, so and so lost a battle to their demons,
Hmm.
till Valhalla, and
And it
I just
happens in every rank. It doesn't matter.
and
It's not not
it's every
biased.
rank. It's every rank. It's not. It doesn't care about black or white. It doesn't care about lance corporal or gunny. The one thing that I've noticed for sure, I can say this. They had this thing, and it still goes around, and I don't knock it, but I remember when it was first making the rounds, 22 a day, right? And people were doing the 22-a-day push-ups, and it was to raise awareness. And I didn't have a good attitude about it. Admittedly, I was kind of cynical. I'd almost say it kind of pissed me off because I'd be like, that's not fixing anything. It's not
Right.
solving anything. It's a Facebook fad and raising awareness. Awareness of what? Like what are we aware of? That this is a problem? Well, thanks. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we know that this is a problem. We don't need awareness. We need a solution. We need a solution to this. And I I tried I try, and again, I have to say this, I am not a clinical physician. I'm not a doctor. Okay? Not a doctor, not a psychologist, not a therapist. I'm not telling anyone to stop medical treatment or psychological treatment. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that there seems to be this, I don't know if it's this, and again, there's an appropriate time and place for, we got to be tough. We got to be tough. We have to be. I mean, you told me yourself. You have to be. We have to be hard on them. We have to be tough. But then when people get out and they still have that, we got to be tough, but there's no foundation in Christ. Now it becomes this, I'm never done. The hump is never over. I can never drop my pack. And if there's no, if there's nothing at the end of it, then what are we relying on? We're relying on ego, right? We're relying on ego, which, as big, Marines, as big as our ego is, it's not unlimited. I don't care. I don't care if you're Delta. I don't care if you're a SEAL. I don't care, a Ranger or whatever. At some point, you will come to the end of yourself. And there's nothing wrong with, the David Gogginses and the Jocko Willings and these people that are trying to teach you to be hard men. But the one thing that I think no one is talking about is they don't want to say it. And again, I can't speak for everyone, but I can tell you one thing that I've noticed beyond the shadow of a doubt: the people that get out, that I've seen, I could be totally wrong, that I've seen, the ones who, they don't even have to have come to the full knowledge yet, but the ones that are seeking God, the God, Jesus Christ, of Nazareth, the God, the answer, John 14:6, the way, the truth, and the life, right? Because it doesn't make any sense, and it's just a waste of everybody's time if we're just chasing all this stuff that's not going to take you anywhere, and it's just going to exhaust you. I feel like this is slept on, and I don't think that this is particularly special to military or police, although I want to get your thoughts on this. I think there is I think there is a solution to this, and although not 100%, in that people have free will. They're going to do what they're going to do. And I have my own horror stories with that, you know. Some people you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. At the end of it, it's your choice. You can choose to accept or deny. But staff sergeant, from what I've seen, the mentality, the shape, the health of the Marine's mind when they get out of the Marine Corps with Christ is vastly different than the Marine who gets out and is trying to make it without Christ.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to break. This is where my call sign in Iraq was preacher. Uh,
Please.
most people would not know that, but now you know,
I
preacher,
love it. I love
because
it.
God's called us to preach, teach the gospel, teach the word of God, to be a good steward of the word of God, so you can help other people, and their eyes of understanding can be open. Number one is the enemy comes to do three things and three things only. Number one is kill. Number two is steal, and number three is destroy. When you're in military service, we're just going to bring this into the military
Yeah.
specifically. It will have a ripple effect in every other branch, career, department. When you're in the military, in the beginning, you're harassed, you're beat down, you're spit on, so to speak, not literally, but you're the lowest of the total pole, and then you start getting some rank, and then when you get rank, you're supposed to be in charge of all the people that are being spit on, and yeah, and they're dependent on you to show up. Um, and then you do your 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, 30 years, and you get out of the military. You went from people depending on you to show up, to give them guidance, to hold them accountable. You have left and right lateral limits when you're in the military. And if you go beyond those left and right lateral limits, regardless of rank, you are held accountable.
Yeah.
The structure's there to eliminate as much failure as possible. Then you get out of the military and you wake up, you're super excited to drive off that base and never look back. I've
Yeah.
never met anybody that's driving away from the base crying, "Oh my God, you know what I mean? I haven't met that person. I'm sure there's somebody out there that was
Right.
crying because they had to go." But the majority of people are ready to go. I'm ready to lay this uniform down and to go be what God's called me to be. Sometimes we know what that is, sometimes we don't know what that is. But the analogy I like to give is when you're in the military and you're having to show up for everybody because that's what we do. As a leader, you show up even when you don't want to show up. You show up with your haircut and you don't put your hands in your pockets and yada 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 yada. You do those things. And when you get out, you have nobody dependent on you. So you go from I am needed, I'm wanted, I'm helpful, and then you go to there's nothing for me to be in charge of. I just need to take care of me. And the way I like to say it is like when my kids are little, like all my kids are grown now, 19, 21, and 26. When they were little, as a parent, I had to show up regardless if I wanted to or not. I could be sick, I could be exhausted. They need to be dropped off at school, picked up to school, bring the track, bring the practice, run them to Dick's Sporting Goods, go get their uniform. Yeah, it's just nonstop. They're depending on you to show up as a leader. When you get out, it's like your kids are grown and they're taking care of themselves. You're sitting, you're fiddling your thumbs, and you start to lose hope, right? And it's an unknown level of hope. When you're in the military, you already know people are going to come to you with problems. You already know that they're going to come to you and ask you for guidance. They're going to come to you and ask you, hey, what are we doing for the Marine Corps ball? You, as the leader, they're coming to you to get the information that they need. When you're not there anymore, no one's coming to you. So what happens is your sphere of influence goes from this big and slowly but surely starts to wither down. And that light, that hope starts to get darker and darker. And slowly but surely, it comes to a realization where you're looking in the mirror and like, what am I doing? Why
Yeah.
am I here? And you start to lose hope. And when you start to lose hope, there comes to a point where the 22 a day, dealing with servicemen and women,
Yeah.
comes into reality. And then we look on social media and we see our brothers and sisters that we served with that are no longer with us for many different reasons. Some overdose, some committed suicide, some decided to drive their car off the cliff, and it doesn't stop, and it keeps coming no matter how you slice it. And I said all that to say this. What is the solution? I have the solution for you if you will listen. And I'm going to break it down in layman's terms in a parable, the way Jesus would break it down for us, I believe, if he was in modern times today.
All right.
Let's just say, let's not talk about biblical principles. Let's talk about life principles. Let's just say
Okay.
you have a rich uncle.
Okay.
He's one of the richest people on the planet. And you're one of his favorite nieces or nephews. And your favorite uncle is with you until he's in his mid 60s, late 70s, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And he's always told you, he said, hey, when I die, I'm gonna leave a will, and inside the will, I'm gonna tell you what you need to know to go out and be successful. I'm gonna leave a will. And so your uncle passes away. Now, because he's rich and you know he has a will, you have you're going to go out of your way to get your hands a copy of that will and read it verbatim, cover to cover, to see what your uncle has left you. What people don't realize is Jesus Christ, in layman's terms, is your uncle, the richest, most successful person in the world, walked the face of the earth, and he left his will for us, and it's in the form of 66 books in the Bible. And what happens is, if you can look at Jesus the way that you would your rich uncle and read that book from cover to cover, your eyes of understanding will be open. The scales will fall off. The 22 a day will diminish. And we will live a blessed and prosperous life because you read the will from cover to cover. The problem, the biggest issues that I've seen in my journey is, yes, we're hearing the word. Sometimes we're doing the word, but we are not living. We're not living the word. And so if you're out there and you lost hope and everybody says, where do I start? Number one is start with Proverbs because that will give you wisdom. And number two is start with the New Testament. Read the will. Jesus Christ has died. In layman's terms, your uncle has passed away. He has left you blessings upon blessings upon blessings. All you have to do is pick up the Bible and read the will.
Wow. I never had it explained that way.
Just read the
That's
will.
that
And
is
he will
fantastic.
he will give you wisdom and insight and direction. And you will live a long, prosperous life. The depression that you have, the dreams that you're having, the psychotic moments, the more you read, the more it suppresses it. The less you read, the more it comes back. And it doesn't matter. You could be closest. What I've realized in my journey, I'm 49 years old. The enemy lives next door, waiting for you to screw up,
Yeah.
waiting to expose your wrongdoing. You can do 99 great things, but you screw up one time. The enemy's there to kill, steal, and destroy. And some of that could be amplified it to the hundredth power. But in God's eyes, lying and murder are the exact same thing. Sin is a sin is a sin. In human terms, we put it in different categories: 8 years, 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, a life in prison. But in God's eyes, it's all the same. So read his will so you can be the best version of yourself.
Man. Wow. It is. It has been an absolute honor and a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for taking time out of
Yeah.
your day. And listen, this is the stuff that matters. This stuff matters. I'm just going to pray that this goes out to the right person and that the right people see it. And the way I see it is this: is it sounds corny, but it's true. It's if this just helps one person, then
Yeah.
I all the better. Well,
Should do it again in the future. At the end of the day, I'm going to be who Michael Nichols is, who's God called me to be. I've had a great journey, but I honestly feel like I've only scratched the surface on what God's called me to do. And I know that He's called me to preach and teach the gospel, but it's non-conventional. When I say non-conventional, I'm not going to be in a church. I'm not going to be in the pulpit. I'm going to be out on the streets preaching and teaching to my brothers and sisters to help their eyes of understanding be open so that they don't have to become a victim 22 a day.
I absolutely love it. All right. Well, listen, like I said, this was an absolute pleasure for everybody else. People that watch the show, veterans and non-veterans alike. You heard some very wise words today from a very disciplined man. And if you haven't seen it, go watch the Dark Dawn series. Like I tell everybody, be strong, endure, content for the faith. Staff Sergeant Nichols, thank you.
God bless. Semper Fi and hoorah.
Hurrah.